Hi, this is Rabbi Moshe Rothschild from the Israel Alliance, bringing you the summary of the news for week ending October 29th, 2020. We do all the work for you. You don't have to watch the news all week. We'll summarize everything at the end of the week. So here we go. Let's start off with our very first story. This week in the news, our top story is, of course, that Israel normalized relations with Sudan, the third Arab country. And in a joint statement, Israel agreed to end the state of, or Israel and Sudan agreed to end the state of belligerence between their nations. This is an incredible development. This move followed the White House announcement that President Trump had informed Congress of his intent to remove Sudan from the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism. Sudan had agreed to pay $335 million in compensation to victims of Al Qaeda attacks in U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, and on the destroyer, the USS Cole, in the year 2000. Israel and the United States signed an agreement to extend cooperation in Judea and Samaria and the Golan Heights. This week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and United States Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, signed an extension of the Israel US Scientific Cooperation Agreement on Wednesday that allowed US funding to apply to research being undertaken in Judea, Samaria, and the Golan Heights. This week, the United States Congress took their first steps to provide bunker buster bombs to Israel, which is of course very important to combat the Iranian attempts to develop nuclear weapons in underground bunkers. This was a bipartisan effort. Republican and Democratic congressmen co-sponsored a bill to secure both the US and Israel from the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran. 10 Arab states, it's been reported, are likely to make peace with Israel. It's an incredible development. The United States president this week said that between 5 and 10 more Arab countries could normalize ties with Israel after the US elections. Hamas, they had previously convicted of a terrible crime, a Gaza peace activist, for the crime of talking to Israelis. Rami Aman, he was released after 6 months in a Hamas jail, but he remains muzzled under threat to rearrest if he talks peace. The Israeli ambassador Gilad Erdan slammed the UN for failure to recognize the new reality on the ground, that there is peace with Arab nations. And here is what he said, referring to the United Nations Security Council. Quote, while the council's talking points have not changed for decades, the Middle East has. In the 2 months since I arrived in New York, I have witnessed a jarring dissonance between what this council chooses to focus on and what is actually happening in the Middle East. Well, Mr. Ambassador, welcome to the United Nations. Under the peace deal with Sudan, Israel has agreed to send $5 million in wheat to Sudan. Israel will be sending wheat to Sudan due to their terrible food insecurity as part of their normalization of relations with Sudan. And an incredible story this week, Israel's Hadassah Hospital is in preliminary talks to set up a branch in the United Arab Emirates. Professor Zev Rothstein, the director of the Hadassah Medical Center, was in Dubai this past week, and they began preliminary negotiations. Incredible. Back to the Sudan-Israel peace deal. It could end up that thousands of Sudanese who've been living in Israel seeking asylum will go back to their home country of Sudan. The Sudanese government has reportedly agreed to accept large numbers of Sudanese citizens who currently reside in Israel and have applied here for asylum. Benny Gantz, who's the alternate prime minister in Israel, and he's also our defense minister, and U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper signed a joint agreement on maintaining Israel's qualitative military edge in the region at the Pentagon this past Thursday. Benny Gantz hailed the agreement as a confirmation of the U.S. commitment to Israel's security. This is a very important agreement, considering that with the United States, it looks like we'll be selling F-35 jets to the United Arab Emirates. So that's it, folks, for this week. This is Rabbi Moshe Rothschild of the Israel Alliance, wishing you not only blessings from the Holy Land, but a Shabbat Shalom, a wonderful Sabbath. And we hope that we will have more good news in the coming week.